All right. We're right up on time. I don't know. Ethan, should we do one more? Is he here? Is the man? Yeah? Okay.
All right.
Arden, you got time for one more?
Yeah.
All right. I can't leave this man hanging on hold. We've got Dean in North Carolina, North Kakalaki.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Dean, how's it going, man?
Do what?
I said, how's it going, man? I couldn't leave you hanging. I couldn't just end it. You've been on hold.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I'm in the process of moving from North Carolina to Virginia to take a job as a campus minister to Virginia Tech. So
there you go.
Doing.
Good luck with the move.
So first, I want to say, sorry.
Oh no.
Get running here. First, I want to say to Arden, I am completely sorry and appalled and ashamed that anybody who would profess to be a Christian would treat you with such dishonor and disrespect. It's clear in 1 Peter 3:5 that as Christians are to give a reason for the hope that they have within them, they're supposed to do that with gentleness and respect. And what Darth Dawkins did expressed neither honor or respect. And so I just want to say, I hope that does not leave a sour taste about Christianity just because of one stupid comment. So I'm sorry for that.
I appreciate that, Dean. I will say that the sour taste of Christianity was left by hundreds of people who in the community I grew up with, but I don't hold that against you, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
I do. I've got to wonder, because Dean is a professional apologist. He's got a web page, and it works very hard to be a resource for Christians. I've got to ask, what goes through your head when you see that particular flavor of online apologist speaking for you and your religion?
Well, I just, for me, I just get really upset that that's the experience that not just one person is having, specifically Arden in this situation, but that there are literally hundreds of people that are watching that, and potentially thousands and millions of people. They're going to watch that for however long YouTube lasts. And so it just is really a poor representation of our faith. And it hurts a little bit too, because having experiences and conversations with people on the other side of the aisle on just about every single issue from all walks of life, I can tell you that that doesn't do them any good. For somebody who wants to claim that they love them and are essentially seeking to show them Jesus, both in argument but also in the way that they live their life. For me, it would just be better if Darth Dawkins just ceased all communications with anybody for the benefit of the church. And
I agree with you.
Especially to Darth, but if that's the way that Darth is going to act, and I don't have a problem having a conversation with Darth about it. But when you look,
I know you wouldn't.
how Jesus operated with people, according to the New Testament, he sat down with tax collectors, with sinners. He talked to prostitutes. He talked to Samaritans, who were considered half-bloods, who were considered unclean by Jews.
You're not lumping Arden in with tax collectors, are you?
I was just gonna say, I was like, well, I'm also a former. I'm a current sex worker, but a former prostitute. So you're getting them both in, Dean. Go for it.
Right, but my point is that it was only the stuck-up religious elite that thought that those people weren't worthy of Jesus' son. So I'm going to stop preaching and let's have a chat, because I could be.
It is wild though with Jesus, because
heavy into going in on Darth Dawkins for the rest of the night. So anyway,
I mean,
what
Jesus did.
is actually.
I was going to make a joke about Jesus, Dean. I was going to be like, I was going to talk about how Jesus. I mean, yeah, in the Gospels, there's like the whole like, you know, kind of meek and mild Jesus. Other than that one thing with the whip and the people, money changers in the temple, but the Revelation Jesus, when he comes back, it's a little more aggressive. The sequel, you know.
Right.
But,
well, we can get in a whole different conversation.
I'm not trying to drag you in there.
So what I wanted to call about actually was, I believe it was the first caller, Lincoln, that called, who was an atheist and is now a Christian. And he said that it was on the basis of the resurrection evidence. And Kenneth, you gave that man a hard time, for sure, about the evidence for the resurrection. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is kind of just, and I don't know if Lincoln is still listening or not, but I'd love to chat with him if it's possible at some point. One of the points that you made, let me ask you it this way: why do you think, or what's your basis for good historical evidence for an event or the existence of a person?
Well, I think I think that it is definitely situation dependent. Yeah. So, I would say that, well, you've got historians recording things that can be good. When you've got things like, you know, places being named after people, that's maybe an indicator that someone might have come through. With like figures like someone like, I don't know, like Marcus Aurelius, you've got money printed with his face on there. You've got his own writings. I mean, there's a lot of different things. It all kind of depends. I think that the existence of a particular person is one thing, but then evidence for specific things that person is alleged to have done is different. So if someone tells me that Marcus Aurelius existed, sure, okay. If someone tells me we think he may have eaten a sandwich, I'm probably going to be like, what's your evidence for that? It's like, well, we found a plate and, you know, like a bread baking thing in his house. All right, fine. Maybe he had a sandwich. If they tell me he raised himself from the dead, I'm going to need more.
Okay. So what do you mean you need more? What is that? And what does that evidence look like? You need more.
Well, my definition of evidence is very broad. I've stuck with now anything that can be used to demonstrate that a claim is true. So I really, all I need is evidence. So if someone tells me we've got Marcus Aurelius's sandwich plate, okay, that can be used to demonstrate that the claim he had a sandwich is true. Sure. Is it conclusive? Am I 100% on Marcus Aurelius ate sandwiches? No. For all I know, that's a burrito plate. You know, I don't know. But so the idea of, like, I don't even know how one would go about demonstrating that the claim that a person resurrected from the dead 2,000 years ago is true. I have no idea how you could do that.
Well, couldn't you use the similar criteria for other historical events, or a similar historical methodology to
Absolutely
establish in general some events are more probable than others, or more likely happened than did not happen.
Totally.
Right. So if there's this, you know, one set of criteria would be explanatory power, explanatory scope, less ad hoc, and illuminates other facts of history. Right. That would be one set of criteria. And so you have, say, the murder of Julius Caesar. What's the explanatory, you know, power? How much of the facts explain what happened? Explanatory scope. How many facts are there with regards to this?
Sure.
Less ad hoc, but theory is least contrived, and then it illuminates other things about Rome that, hey, on the basis of, shortly after this took place with Julius Caesar, if that took place, then it would explain this piece of event that happened, I don't know, a year or two.
Yeah. And we know that
So
political assassinations are a thing that happen. We know that, senates convene. We know that Caesars existed. There's a lot going in there. Yes.
Right. And we'd have to, even in looking at that, as far as the explanatory power and explanatory scope, we'd have to say, okay, yes, there was a senate at the time. Yes, there was a plot to kill him, and he was found dead. So I guess my point is, why not take that type of criteria and just map it on to the resurrection in the following way? Okay,
that's precisely what I do.
Right. I think, can I point out why there's a discrepancy there? Because we are doing the same thing, but the difference is with the Bible, you have one source, the Bible. You could argue that the 4 Gospels are 4 sources. I think you could, that's not, I think, a convincing argument, but you have the Bible, right? When we're talking about Caesar, we're talking about, we have different sources to confirm that there was a Senate meeting. We have, to be fair, I'm not a historian, so if I'm saying things that aren't true, feel free to call me out on it. There's probably evidence that confirmed that there was a plan to assassinate him. There's probably people who wrote separately about the assassination itself. These are all disparate sources that were coming together. With the Bible, we have the Bible. That's it.
Right. And Arden, I see your point there, and I think that that's well taken. I would also say that the majority of those sources with regards to the assassination of Julius Caesar are also Roman sources. So it seems to me what could be happening here is, and I'm not trying to be disingenuous at all, but it sounds like you're saying that because these sources are compiled in the Bible, then you can't use those sources to talk about things in the Bible. And it seems to me that if that were the case, you couldn't use Roman sources to talk about things that happened in Rome, or Union sources to talk about things that happened in the Union during the Civil War, or Confederate sources that talk about what happened at Gettysburg for the Civil War, if that's kind of the standard we're setting.
I think that's slightly different. And the reason why is because if there was a Roman catalog of people that they crucified, and in that catalog we saw Jesus of Nazareth was on that list, and then right after that we had writings that claim to have happened on that day that are extra biblical, that holy shit, this dude we just saw get crucified 3 days ago, he's fucking not there anymore. It's wild. I'm not even saying that would convince me, but that would be more convincing than the situation that we have currently.
Well, don't we have writings that are outside of the Gospels that speak to the death of Jesus that are relatively early? I mean, even Kenneth,
how are we defining relatively early?
This is a point. This is a place where with apologists I always wonder, because you know how weak these sources are.
No, I'm simply trying to answer what Arden has laid on the table here, and my point is that earlier we said that, or you said that the earliest sources are the Gospels, and those are primary sources for the resurrection. And for most Christians, that's true. But outside of the Gospels, there are earlier writings within the New Testament by a gentleman who was not a follower of Jesus during the time of Jesus' death, that later becomes a follower, and that's Paul. And so we have 1 Corinthians 15, that's an early oral creed, and Romans chapter 1, 3 through 5, I believe, that are both dated as early oral creeds that predate the writings of the gospel. So
and
why
the creeds are evidence that people, the creeds are evidence
to what we're talking about with what Arden's talked about.
The creeds are evidence that people believe a set of claims and nothing more. A creed is not evidence that a thing happened. the creed is evidence that people believed that a thing happened. That's a pretty big distinction.
Right. No, and I would say that the only reason that I would bring up the creeds is because what that shows is that this is a early belief of the church. But when you dive into those creeds, specifically 1 Corinthians 15, there are specific claims that are made about why these beliefs would be generated. Namely, that Jesus rose from the dead.
Right. I understand that the claim is in there that Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, I get it. And Paul goes so far as to say that if the resurrection didn't happen, that, you know, all of the house of cards crumbles at that point. You know, everything's in vain. But that's not evidence that the resurrection happened. It's like
certainly you'd have to go further to say you'd do an examination of, okay, well, what is the cause of the beliefs that they saw Jesus risen from the grave. But I would say that that's at least, at bare minimum, early source material that says that in the earliest infancy of the church, that the belief that Jesus rose from the dead was not something that came later. It was part of the reason why the church grew in the first place.
But why does that matter?
So you have
We've got people, there are Scientologists alive right now who remember when L. Ron Hubbard was alive. So what? What does that have to do with whether the claims of Scientology are true? We've got really, really early source documents for Scientology. So what?
Right. Well, you're missing my point, Kenneth. My point is that, you know, this is a early belief, and you have to ask the question based upon the creed in 1 Corinthians 15, what is the best accounting for these appearances? And I don't think you get off simply just saying
accounting for appearances or claims about appearances.
Lied about it. Do what?
Are we talking about appearances or claims about appearances? Because like apologists are fond of saying, like, Jesus, we've got 500 witnesses. No, we don't. We've got a thing that says Jesus appeared to 500 people. We don't have 500 witnesses. We've got one hearsay account about 500 witnesses.
I wouldn't even appeal to the 500 if I were going to make the case to you. I would appeal to probably Paul and the disciples. Would probably be where I would make that appeal.
So we've got really early source documents for Scientology. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the best reason why you would have tens of thousands of people around the United States who have dedicated their lives to becoming clear, you know, learning about Xenu? What's the best explanation for this religion appearing in the last few decades?
Oh, well, I'll be the first to admit to you, I don't know nearly enough about Scientology, specifically what the claims of Scientology are. That's probably an area where I should read up on what's the guy's name? L. Ron Hubbard?
L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah. And this is the thing. There's a whole religion of people who are utterly convinced that Dean Meadows that you have been overrun by thetans, and that every problem in your life is a direct result of a conspiracy where alien spirits were released on this planet. And there's some stuff that they're claiming. How much sleep do you lose every night wondering about whether or not you've missed the true revelation of Scientology?
Well, then you just have to take each claim on its face and examine the evidence for it. I mean, that's what you would do. And that's no different than the resurrection case. I mean,
right. It is no different.
And I think we would agree. And I think that we would agree that just because there are, and you and I would agree with this, just because there are claims about a thing doesn't mean that it's necessarily that a thing happened, right? Just because there's claims about alien spirits doesn't mean that those things exist. And I would agree with you and say that, you know, just because there are claims with regards to the resurrection doesn't mean that the resurrection happened. What we want to do is we want to do a historical investigation and ask the question, you know, what is the best explanation for these claims even taking place in the first place?
I completely agree. I'm getting yelled at by our producer, who's super mean, talking about how we're over time. So I agree with you that historical investigation is a good idea.
One more point that's not relevant to the current conversation.
Yeah, super. Ethan's going to come on here and yell at you.
Ethan's off, Gary. Go
it wouldn't
for
be
it.
The first time that Ethan yelled at me. I'm okay with it. So you mentioned the Gospels about they're probably not written by eyewitnesses, but I would say, the same thing would be the case for the burning of Rome by Nero. They're secondary accounts by Tacitus, Suetonius, and I forget the third guy's name because I clearly don't know how to write stuff down. Takes place 60 years after the fact, and you mentioned discrepancies there. That even in historical documents, you can have different discrepancies of an event and still get to the core truth of an event. So we can save that conversation and shelve it for another time.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Dean.
On that note, Dean, have a great rest of your night. Good luck with your move.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Hey, thanks.